Ever feel like life's just tossing you around, like you're stuck in a washing machine on spin cycle?
Yeah, that feeling of being completely out of control.
Exactly. Well, today we're diving deep into Stoicism.
With a philosopher whose own life story is like the ultimate self-help book.
Epictetus. The
Right.
guy was born into slavery in ancient Rome.
And he still became one of the most influential thinkers in history.
It just blows my mind.
Uh,
He didn't just talk the talk, he walked the walk.
exactly. And his ideas are surprisingly, well, practical.
So no ivory tower philosophy here.
Not at all. Epictetus was all about giving people tools to deal with everyday struggles.
And one of his biggest tools, this idea he's known for, is the dichotomy of control.
It sounds complicated, but it's actually very simple.
Okay, I'm listening. Break it down for me.
Imagine drawing a line down the middle of your life, right?
Okay, got it. Line down the middle.
On one side, you've got the things you can actually control, your thoughts, your actions.
So that side's all about me, my choices.
You got it. But then on the other side,
Let me guess. The stuff I can't control.
bingo. The weather, the economy, other people's opinions, all that jazz.
All the stuff that drives me crazy. So how does this dichotomy of control actually help?
Well, Epictetus says true freedom comes from recognizing this division.
So instead of stressing about things I can't change, I should focus on.
Your own inner world. That's where your power lies.
Okay, I get that in theory. But what about when something truly frustrating happens?
Like that traffic jam this morning.
Don't even get me started. How can you just accept that?
Epictetus wouldn't say you should be emotionless, like some kind of robot.
So it's not about suppressing your feelings.
Not at all. It's more about understanding that your initial reaction, that anger or frustration.
Yeah, that's not always the most helpful, is it?
Exactly. But the good news is it's not you. It's just a reaction. And you can learn to choose a different one.
So instead of yelling at the car in front of me, which, let's be honest, we've all done,
I plead the fifth.
I should try to see it differently.
Exactly. Maybe use that time to listen to a podcast.
Hey.
Or practice some deep breathing. You've got options.
So this dichotomy of control, it's about recognizing you have a choice in how you respond.
Absolutely. You're not just a leaf being blown around in the wind.
I like that. But it makes you wonder, if we're focusing on what we can control, what should we be aiming for?
Now, that is the million-dollar question. And this is where Epictetus's emphasis on virtue comes in.
Virtue, like being a good person.
Exactly. He believed that was the ultimate goal. Not wealth, not fame, but striving to be a good person.
So forget the fancy car and the big house. Being a good person is what really matters. That's kind of a radical idea these days.
It's a refreshing change, isn't it?
It really is. But what does it even mean to be virtuous, according to Epictetus?
Well, he identifies 4 key virtues: wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance.
Okay, so not just one big thing, but 4 different qualities to cultivate.
And we'll dive into each of those in detail, but let's start with wisdom.
No, when I think wisdom, I picture, I don't know, old guys with beards sitting around talking philosophy.
You know, you're not that far off with that image of old philosophers.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, for Epictetus, wisdom wasn't just about, like, having a head full of facts.
It wasn't just about reading every scroll in the library.
Exactly. It was about using knowledge to actually live a better life, understanding what truly matters.
And then making choices that line up with that.
Exactly. It's like you can know all the ingredients for a delicious cake.
But that doesn't mean you can actually bake one.
Perfect analogy. You need the recipe, the know-how to put it all together.
So wisdom is like the recipe for a good life.
You could say that. And the next ingredient in that recipe, that would be justice.
Okay, so we're moving from wise choices to just ones. And when I think justice, I think fairness, honesty, basic good stuff.
You're right on the money. For Epictetus, justice was all about living in harmony with others.
Treating people right even when it's hard.
Especially when it's hard. It's easy to be just when you're dealing with, like, your best friend.
Right, but what about when someone's really pushing your buttons?
That's where the rubber meets the road. Epictetus would say you practice justice because it's the right thing to do, not for a pat on the back.
So even if nobody's watching, even if it's something small like letting someone merge in front of you in traffic?
It all adds up. It's about building that habit of fairness in every interaction.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've got wisdom for making good choices, justice for treating others right. What's next on Epictetus's list?
Next up is courage. And I'm not talking about, fighting gladiators in the Colosseum.
Good, because I left my shield at home. So what kind of courage are we talking about?
For Epictetus, courage was about facing your fears with, an inner strength.
So standing up for what you believe in, even when it's unpopular.
Exactly. Think about a time you had to have a tough conversation or speak up against something you knew was wrong.
Or even just keeping a promise when it got really hard.
That's everyday courage, and it's essential for living a virtuous life.
It takes guts to do the right thing, even when it's hard. I can see that. Okay, so that's wisdom, justice, courage. There was one more, right?
The fourth and final virtue on Epictetus's list is temperance.
Temperance. Now that one makes me think of, I don't know, monks meditating on a mountaintop.
Well, it can involve a certain amount of self-control, sure.
Let me guess. This is the virtue I need to work on most, especially when it comes to, say, chocolate.
It's not about depriving yourself entirely.
Oh, thank goodness.
It's more about finding a balance, enjoying life's pleasures without letting them control you.
So it's like being in the driver's seat of your own life.
Exactly. You're in control, not your impulses or desires.
Okay, so to recap, we've got wisdom for making good choices, justice for treating others right, courage to face our fears, and temperance for finding balance.
4 solid pillars for a good life.
They really are. But what about those times when life throws you a curveball? How do we stay grounded when everything feels chaotic and unpredictable?
That's where another key Stoic concept comes in. Accepting fate. They even had a phrase for it, amor fati.
Amor fati? What does that even mean? Amor fati. Love of fate. Sounds kind of nice. But how do you love something as, unpredictable as fate?
Well, it's not about, loving every single thing that happens to you. It's more about accepting that life has its own plan.
Okay, so you're saying don't fight the current.
Exactly. Epictetus believed that struggling against what we can't control, it just leads to suffering. It's like trying to swim upstream, you just wear yourself out.
So go with the flow. Doesn't that make you passive, though? Like you just give up and let life happen to you?
Not at all. Think of it more like you're a sailor, right? You can't control the wind, but you can adjust your sails.
I like that. So accepting fate doesn't mean giving up. It's more like acknowledging reality.
Exactly. And then choosing how you'll respond.
So it's a two-step process.
Yeah.
Acceptance, then action.
You got it. You can't control everything.
And then you focus on what you can control.
Yeah.
Your choices, your attitude.
And that's where Epictetus's teachings become really powerful. Because even when things are tough, we always have the power to choose our response.
It's about finding that inner freedom, even in the middle of chaos.
You said it.
This is all starting to click now. But we've been talking a lot about our own inner world. Did Epictetus have anything to say about, how we relate to other people?
Especially when those relationships are tough.
Exactly. Because let's face it, not everyone's easy to get along with.
That's where the virtue of justice comes in, remember. That applies to how we treat everyone, even the difficult people in our lives.
So even when someone's being a real pain.
Try to respond with, with justice and kindness.
Easier said than done sometimes. But you're saying we should still try.
It's not about being a pushover. You can set boundaries, but you can do it with grace. Remember, you can't control how others behave, only your own reaction.
It all comes back to that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Focusing on what you can control, even when someone else is being difficult.
And that's a kind of freedom, isn't it?
It really is. So much of what we've talked about today, it's about finding that inner strength. And that's something no one can take away from you.
Exactly.
This has been an incredible deep dive. It's amazing to think that these ideas, they're still so relevant today, even after all these centuries. What's the one thing you hope listeners will take away from our conversation?
If there's one thing I hope you remember from Epictetus, it's this. You have more control over your own happiness than you think.
You have the power to choose.
And by focusing on what you can control, by embracing those Stoic virtues, wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance.
You can weather any storm.
Exactly.
What a powerful message. And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into the wisdom of Epictetus. We hope you found it as insightful as we have. Until next time, remember, amor fati.
Love your fate.
And embrace the power you have to create a fulfilling life.